and then he will go first during closing statements, which means you will go second during all of those things. Would you like to go first, or would you like to defer and have Chukundi go first?
You know what? I'm happy to defer and let the other candidate and our neighbor go first.
All right. Well, Chukundi, you will be going first. At this time, we're going to start off with our opening statements. We'll do that, and then when the opening statements are done, we're going to go to our moderators, and our moderators will begin to take it from there. So you now have 2 minutes and are on the clock for your opening statement. Salisbury.
Well, hey, everybody. Again, my name is Chukundi Salisbury, and I'm running to be your 37th District State Representative. I'm running for position number 2, as you know. A little bit about me. I'm married with 2 children. I live right here in Rainier Valley, where I've resided for 23 years. I grew up in the central area, though, and I attended middle school and high school and elementary here in Seattle, finishing at the greatest high school in the state, Garfield High School. I have a degree in computer science from Elizabeth City State University. It's an HBCU located in North Carolina, where my daughter actually attends now. The last 23 years for the Seattle Parks and Recreation Department. And there I've been a manager. I've ran Garfield Community Center and many other positions. I'm a founder of a couple of nonprofits, including 100 Black Parents. And then I'm a business owner. I founded C-Spot Media Group. I've owned a nightclub. I've owned barbershops and many other things in the community. But the thing that I want people to know about me, most importantly, is that I have a long history of community action and real servant leadership in this community, where I've made a great impact on the ground. Many families, from serving as a Santa for the community to organizing camps to bubbling brown sugar to working on gun violence. I have a myriad of volunteer experience where I've just illustrated servant leadership my entire life. And that's why I'm running for office, to continue that servant leadership
10
in
seconds.
Olympia.
Okay. And Kirsten, you have 2 minutes, and you are on the clock now for your opening statement.
Thank you so much. And I just want to give a huge shout out. Thank you, Rainier Avenue Radio, for hosting these forums. It's been so amazing. You know, we should be out with each other as neighbors, and we're all trying to be COVID safe, and these forums make a huge difference. So wonderful to connect with neighbors. I'm Kirsten Harris-Talley. I'm a Black queer PTA mom living here in Rainier Valley. I have a 4th grader and a kindergartner. My husband and I are doing our best to steward them through school right now, as many families are. I just left previously being NARAL Pro-Choice Washington's executive director, and it felt full circle because we've been pushing for Approved 90 and making sure sex ed stays in schools. And the first state level policy I ever got to work on was the Healthy Youth Act. I've had the pleasure over 20 years of working on progressive and winning state policy in coalition with many neighbors. I'm an abolitionist. I'm an activist. I'm proud to have stood with Block the Bunker and No New Youth Jail and other movements. And I'm proud to march in the streets this summer with the Black Lives Matter movement for the change we've seen at the municipal level. And quite frankly, we need that level of change at the state level. I'm running because my neighbors asked me to. And I believe they asked me to because I showed in 2017 when I was on Seattle City Council that I know the game. And I'm willing to give that playbook to our neighbors so we can all participate in our democracy together and make big change. We didn't know when we announced in January that a pandemic would hit. None of us knew that in that pause, the Black Lives Matter movement would finally be heard, and that the righteous requests we've had for literally generations and centuries, that change could come. And in Washington State, we have a lot of change to make, starting with our upside down tax code. So I'm excited for the conversation today, and I'm really proud of our community campaign. And I thank you for having me.
Okay, we are going to go ahead and get started. And Phyllis, you will ask the first question, and will you address that question initially to Chukundi? And let's go.
Sure, thank you. Hi, Chukundi. Hope you're doing well this evening.
Hey.
Hi, my first question is just a little long, but I needed to get it out there. Historical neglect and non-investment in safe infrastructure where BIPOC communities live has led to disproportionate levels of road traffic collisions, resulting in serious injury and death among these communities. With a long history of documented abuse and implicit bias by SPD, which has further complicated BIPOC communities' access to safe and comfortable transportation, free of harassment, brutality, and risk of escalation, leading to potential imprisonment or death. What is your recommendation to rebuild BIPOC communities' unencumbered access to mobility on our public right-of-ways?
1 minute.
Wow. Well, that's a great question. And so what I would say to that is, obviously, I love some of the improvements that Seattle Public Transportation Department, SDOT's been doing along Rainier Avenue. I actually live right next to Rainier and Holly, where there's been significant accidents. And so what I would just say is that, again, we just need to make sure that the impact meets the results, meets the intention. Because if you look at some of the plans and the documents, the city and the state, we are really pro-transportation. We put in the light rail years ago. However, what happened with that, with my business as well, is that, Black and brown businesses were washed away. My barbershop was washed away as an impact of that surface, the choice to go surface on that. So, again, I think that we have many plans and policies in place. However, they are not applied properly. And in the places that we don't have the information, I'd like to be able to fill those gaps.
And that's time.
Thank you.
And Kirsten, same question for you. Do you need the question repeated?
The preamble, I took notes. If just the base question could be repeated again, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Phyllis.
Sure. So with that long history of the biasness from the police department and across all the different communities of BIPOC, they've taken away access to safe, comfortable transportation. There's harassment, there's brutality, there's a risk of escalation and even death. So what is your recommendation to build this BIPOC community?
So I want to say I also am really behind Project Zero, which led to the road diet that really helped with streets. So there's infrastructure things that need to be done. But I did hear, again, with the repeat of that question, the heart of this question is a lot about safety and what that feels like when you're Black, brown, and Indigenous.
Correct.
And for SPD right now, there's interactions happening on the streets, the very streets where we walk and congregate and move and drive. What we need to do is make sure that with the passing of Initiative 940, we need to actually invest the dollars at the state level for de-escalation training so that I don't have to worry when I'm pulled over about whether deadly force will be used on me, because too many Black folks have died just driving around in our neighborhood. I've also seen folks harassed just for being in large numbers on a street corner. All of that's happening and it needs to end. And I also need to say, the county level also, we need to look at this because the county and the sheriff's department
10 seconds.
monitors our transit systems. And there's a lot of harassment happening there. I often see confusion. If we had free transit and folks weren't there to enforce fair,
and that's time,
that would make a difference. Thank you.
And Adam, your opportunity for your first question, and please direct your first question initially to Chukundi.
Sure. Thanks, Chukundi. Thanks for having me. So I'm a father, and as are you. And you described your childcare plan. Could you talk about what is the childcare system that you're looking to build in Washington State? 1
minute.
Yeah, I'm really looking to get fully funded whole child care from 0 to 5. It really shouldn't be an issue for parents, quite frankly, to have to worry about that. And so then specifically what I like to see happen is that the child care dollars, especially in places where we're paying subsidies, the child care dollars would actually go to our providers. Oftentimes we see a yo-yo approach where somebody didn't sign up for enough classes. Now they've lost their child care, or they're in between jobs for just a couple months and they've lost their child care, right? And what we don't want to see, and I know a lot of people that are in this situation. I live across the street from, 2 different home-based child care. So, Miss Norma raised my daughter and, and Dominique's mom. I know those guys. And so, many child cares, that's what I like to see, is that those facilities know, in fact, that they're going to have the resources to be able to take care of our community's children. I know this also from working at Seattle Parks and Recreation.
That's time. That's time.
Hey, Tony, I need you to give me my 10 seconds like you gave her. You didn't give me no 10 seconds, bro.
I did. I'm sorry that you didn't hear me.
Okay. I didn't hear it at all.
Okay. And you know what? I'll give you 10 additional seconds. Go ahead.
Well, no, all I was going to say is that Seattle Parks and Recreation, we've been putting childcare hubs together, and that's one of the things we realize is that regardless of whether people are working or not, childcare must be provided. Thank you.
No problem. And we certainly want to make sure that both of you have equal opportunity to do this. What is going on is that depending on how you're watching with the clock, you may or may not see it, or sometimes there's been a delay. So I'm just doing it verbally just to make sure that everybody's on point. And if you're listening, that's all you're hearing anyway. I didn't want to say it too loud, but I'll say it a little bit louder, so don't let me startle you. We'll go back again to next question to direct that same question to Kirsten. And do you need the question repeated?
I think I'm good. And I just want to say from go, we need to start with the value of universal childcare. And what that could look like is expanded infrastructure for both the facility and cultural facilities. And I say that because in the 37th, the majority of our childcare providers who are in facilities are Black, Brown, and Indigenous run businesses, mostly by women. And we need to invest in those businesses and those models because they're culturally competent, they're in language, we know they're serving the needs of our families. But a lot of families right now are expanding the web of in-home childcare as well. And I would like to see more concentration investment there. I've actually had the opportunity already to meet with many of the directors of facilities, and they're asking for expansion of coverage for PPE and other equipment that they're going to need as we weather this storm together, because the considerations of those costs right now with everything else is a huge weight on their businesses, and government can ease that pain. I also want to see expansion of coverage so that we are putting care around our caregivers. We right now do not have anything at the state level that allows cooperative use and access to insurance and other things that, quite frankly, we need to make sure after a pandemic, we're wrapping a lot of care around everyone who helps our economy and helps our families.
That's time.
We have a lot of change to make.
And Phyllis, we'll go back to you. And this time, please direct your first question to Kirsten.
Hi, Kirsten. My question is, COVID-19 clearly showed the disparities impact on the infrastructure of education, healthcare, employment, and minority-owned businesses, along with housing. What do you plan to propose to address these disparities of these broken systems? In other words, what plans do you have to eradicate injustice identified as a result of COVID-19?
1 minute. Kirsten.
So I want to say that right now what's really clear is that our whole economy is upside down. The tax burden is too much. We need to start with making sure that we have guaranteed jobs. When right now we have a moratorium at the state level, that's putting a lot of debt and weight on folks who are 7 months into this. We need to move into a forgiveness model and make sure that folks know that they're going to be able to keep a roof over their heads to weather this tide. And right now, I have to say the infrastructure we have, the reason folks are hurting so much right now is we have not been investing deeply enough into community models, community care, universal health care, all of the things that folks need. And now is the moment for us to change that. The reason I am not talking to lobbyists from insurance companies and others is that they've created this system that is now not serving the needs of our communities. And I want to make sure that our Black, Brown, Indigenous businesses are getting the kind of support that they should be, not just big corporations at the top.
10 seconds.
So we have to invest in our communities now and in the things we know everyone needs immediately.
And Chukundi, do you need the question repeated? Would you like the question repeated?
Sure, I'll take the question repeated. Thank you.
Okay.
All right, Chukundi. COVID-19 clearly shows the disparity impact on the infrastructure of education, healthcare, employment, minority-owned businesses, and housing. What do you plan to propose to address these disparities of these broken systems? Or what plan do you have to eradicate the injustice identified as a result of COVID-19?
Well, first of all, I think that we need to look at addressing the wealth gap. We can't move forward at all in terms of this recovery. I think that should be the basis. In fact, so people can finally understand that Black and Brown people are not starting at the same place. We cannot just pull ourselves up our bootstraps, if you will, as the recovery and things open up. As folks, receive resources, and they say, well, why didn't you do it? Anybody could have did it. Obviously, we couldn't because we're starting, up to 20 times further behind, when we look at the wealth gap in our community here. So what that means, obviously, specifically is extending the moratorium on, evictions, rent forgiveness via subsidies, and then a focus on businesses. Many of the small businesses in this community support me, and they're looking for me to go to Olympia and work on their behalf. They trust me to do that.
10
And
seconds.
those are the things that I want to work on to address your question. Thank you.
And Adam, again, your next question, and please direct that initially to Kirsten.
Kirsten, following on Phyllis's question about how do we build the better society that we want to live coming out of COVID, how do we start addressing the community wealth gap in a major way, and what will you do in Olympia to do that?
1 minute. Kirsten.
So the biggest consideration around the wealth gap is who has access to what kind of jobs and what kind of access to wealth through home ownership. And quite frankly, our district has had racist redlining policy that's put us at a disadvantage. I want to see a movement to cooperative models of the affordability of housing for folks to get into affordable housing that they can own and build as a community. I want to move from public funding into community funding, freeing the land and making sure that what's built there, the community owns, so that the profits are fed back into the community. And I want to reverse our upside down tax code by making sure we close capital gains loopholes. Money that makes money should be taxed so that we can get that money into people's pockets right now. The working families tax credit also needs to be funded and implemented, and we need to increase it from $300 to $1,200 so that families have enough to actually make a difference. And so we have a lot we can do right away. We need to hit the ground running and know the
10
systems
seconds.
inside so that we can make sure we're holding the line. No austerity budget. I've signed that pledge. Solidarity pledge from King County Equity Now. I've signed that pledge. It's going to take all of us holding the line.
And
We
that's
can't
time.
survive austerity again.
And Chukundi, would you like the question repeated? Chukundi?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was muted. Yeah, please repeat the question. Thank
Adam,
you.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sure. What do we need to be doing to be able to build the society that we want to live in post-COVID, about addressing the community wealth gap, and what will you do in Olympia to drive that?
1 minute.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you. I too am very interested in making sure that we get the working families tax credit funded and working correctly. But, one of the things that I talk about all the time at a state level that is low-hanging fruit that I like to work on day one is getting the Office of Equity actually staffed, where we can have a state office that is helping drive all of our improvements, policies, and actions across the state, and most specifically in our district. As I talked about earlier, we need to identify and make sure we keep talking about the wealth gap. And to that end, I will continue to do that. I also want to work on, obviously, getting progressive revenue, such as the capital gains tax, and other taxes like a wealth tax.
10
And then
seconds.
specifically, I'm interested in bringing back cannabis revenues to be able to have microloans and youth employment in our community.
And that's time. You're listening to rainieravenueradio.world. This is our special community election connection. These are the candidates for 37th legislative position, number 2. And we'll be back to have more conversation. Remember, candidates, when we come back, you will have 15 seconds to ask a question. The opponent will have 1 minute to respond, and then you'll get 30 seconds for rebuttal. And we'll be starting with you, Chukundi, when we come back in about 2-3 minutes.
What up, y'all? DJ Dirty Harry hanging out with my guys at rainieravenueradio.world. Check them out. That traffic jam, that commercial free, those traffic reports, the music. Man, doing it out here. rainieravenueradio.world.
Wash your hands, don't touch your face, wipe things down, clean up your space. When you cough and sneeze, do responsibly. If you feel you're getting ill, isolate at home and chill. No, you're not alone. Please pick up your phone and call 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Health 206-477-3977. King County 206-477-3977. Public Community Radio Station will provide you with more information. Say Rainier Avenue Radio. Your community radio station will provide you with more information. Rainier Avenue Radio.
What the hell do you know about politics? Probably not a lot, but guess what? You're in luck. Now we have a show for you here at Rainier Avenue Radio called Politics Off the Cuff every Thursday at 3:30, hosted by, well, me, Cliff Cawthon. So tune in, learn something, stay woke.
This is the news on Rainier Avenue Radio.
A series of early morning explosions heavily damaged an asphalt plant near Commencement Bay Sunday morning in northeast Tacoma, forcing residents to stay indoors. Per Como News, Tacoma fire crews were dispatched to the Gardner Fields asphalt plant around 4:30 a.m. Sunday for reports of multiple explosions and heavy fire. Crews worked for several hours to shut off the natural gas supply to the fire and extinguish the blaze. According to the Tacoma Fire Department, 70 tons of liquid asphalt caught fire in one of the storage silos. A smoke advisory for northeast Tacoma and Browns Point area residents was in place for several hours, but has since been lifted. Several people who live nearby say they were concerned with the black thick smoke that may have been toxic.
And that's your news on Rainier Avenue Radio.
This is Paul Pearson, host of Star Time. And when I'm not busy tearing the roof off the suckers, I'm listening to rainieravenueradio.world.
Welcome back to rainieravenueradio.world. It's me, Tony B, and this is our Community Election Connection Campaign 2020, Engage and Activate. And that's exactly what we're trying to do for you, our listeners tonight, is get you to get engaged by knowing what the issues are, sharing your concern for the issues, and then activate. One of the ways you can certainly activate is to vote. Again, you can fill this ballot out if you have it. Rather than just say, hey, you know, I've heard my friend say this or I've heard my friend say that. We're providing you with information so that you can see which of these candidates most closely aligns with your concerns and your issues. And then you decide. It's your vote. That's the whole thing about this vote, is it's yours, and you get to use it however you want to. Now, if you want to be a one-issue candidate, that's fine. But these down-ballot issues are the ones that have the most impact on your community. Yes, the presidential election takes up a lot of the auction in the room. But don't forget that these are critical, which is why we're offering you conversations and debates with OSPI. That's coming up, Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, on Friday. And tomorrow we'll have our Snohomish County Black Candidates Forum. Not selecting which ones you should vote with, but just giving you an opportunity to hear from the candidates. Of course, on Thursday, we're going to be hosting the Lieutenant Governor debate. And now, here's the thing about this. This is just suggestive. If Biden wins, there's some rumor that he could be booted up. Just think about that. And that means whoever you choose for lieutenant governor, well, they could come into play. So all of these are important. We've done Supreme Court justice debates as well. And all of these are available, and you can easily go back and look them up on rainieravenueradio.world. So as we move into the second half of this debate, I mentioned that there would be an opportunity for the candidates to ask a question of each other. So Chukundi, you will go first. You have 15 seconds to ask a question of Kirsten. She'll have 1 minute to respond, and then you get 30 seconds following to rebut. So here we go. Chukundi, go ahead and ask your question.
Okay, so, I really didn't want to ask any kind of negative stuff, but my people asked me to ask Kirsten about this. They say that you're a proud abolitionist, yet in 2017, your only significant vote on the city council, you voted to significantly raise the police budget.
Okay.
How can the voters trust you to follow up in defunding the police when your only
That's it.
legislative action doesn't match up?
1 minute.
Quite the opposite. I actually made sure, because I had just come off of activism with Block the Bunker, to remove the last of the $12 million that was slated there, to continue investment into breaking ground there. Furthermore, I met with many activists and many internal committees, including the Community Police Commission. I helped vote in my vote the start of what turns into the accountability level of our infrastructure for accountability within Seattle governance and SPD. And all of that ground laying has now led to this moment where I have marched in the streets with my neighbors to make sure we hold the line there. I did not vote to increase that budget. The considerations on that budget was wrapped up in a large vote where I was working to move those dollars out and have it invested in
10
homelessness.
seconds.
That's just not the case. Did I vote overall for the overall package of the budget? Yes. But did I specifically vote to decrease that budget out of my office with my line items?
And that's
Yes.
time. And Chukundi, you now have 30 seconds for a rebuttal. 30 seconds.
Well, I guess I would just say that, and what I've written down here is that, you know, some of the other candidates or the other city council members, namely Sawant, who stood on her principles, voted against the budget. And as an abolitionist, I would hope that you would stand on those principles that you have so much commitment to, because at the end of the day, the police budget did rise on your vote.
All right. And Kirsten, you have 15 seconds to ask a question directly to Chukundi. Go ahead.
You've stated many times in forums that you're proud not to know any legislators or the game in Olympia. Yet as an activist, I found it's knowing that playbook that has helped me have the edge when it's come to winning policy with my neighbors. In what ways will you be working in caucus? And in what ways will you make sure the caucus is supporting Black viewpoints and Black policy?
1 minute, Chukundi.
Well, again, I know people from being an activist myself and being a PCO and the like, and I'm not as familiar, but I've met a lot of folks that I plan on being a part of the Black caucus. I've been in talks with Deborah Intiman, Melanie Morgan. I'm good friends with Jesse Johnson, but not in the capacity as a Washington insider, an Olympia insider. I've not made any pre-deals with folks. I know these people personally. I know Jamila Taylor. I know her father because she's an AKA. She's a part of my community. So I'm going to depend on my community relationships that I've built with real people to guide me and help me in finding the relationships I need to be successful in Olympia. And again, I'm going to stand on my principles and work
10
within
seconds.
the networks that I have. Thank you.
And Kirsten, you have 30 seconds for rebuttal.
I'm so glad you brought up working with community. We have a youth team that's helping us organize a youth agenda, and we're also building an accountability council now so that my neighbors and the folks who are already building policy for 2021 are telling us what they're stewarding. I'm then going directly to those legislators and those caucus leads to make sure that I am making sure I know where we are in the process with the community policy we're bringing forward. It matters how this game works, and it matters because we need to hit the ground running to hold the line on austerity and make sure funding and services to our community holds.
Okay. Daniel, do we have Mary on the line from Atlantic Street Center? Well, there was supposed to be an Atlantic Street Center question here. She was on and then got popped off, and you know how technology works. So we're going to see if we can get Mary to come back. Again, thanks to our sponsors, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, and then also Seattle Academy of Arts and Sciences. And again, our special community partner, been in this community for over 100 years, Atlantic Street Center. And we appreciate your interest in making sure that community stays informed. We're going to go back now to our moderators, and Phyllis, we'll be starting with you. And would you please direct your first question initially to Chukundi?
Chukundi, the state budget is facing an $8 million deficit.
It's 4, right?
Plans to balance the budget while still providing necessary and essential services and programs for young, seniors, communities of color, and other severely impacted populations.
Well, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really against any type of austerity. I too have pledged for that, and so that means that there will be no cuts. I will stand for no cuts to social services, education, and anything that's going to hurt our working families, especially people, obviously, in my district. And then, of course, people say, well, where's the revenue going to come from? There's the prison budget. I know that I've been speaking consistently about reducing and reallocating, defunding our correctional facilities. And then obviously there's the money that we put into the black hole around cannabis as well. And then in the long term, of course, I'm looking for additional progressive revenue in terms of the capital gains tax and taxes on the wealthy,
10
and
seconds.
eventually working towards the day that we have an equitable income tax. Thank you.
Okay. And Phyllis, would you like an opportunity for rebuttal or to give the anything you want to address that you want to hear more explanation on from one of our candidates?
At this time, I would like to talk. I have one other question that I'd rather.
We got to move. But do you want to rebuttal from this particular, any of the answers that you got on this question?
No, I'm okay with this one. Thank you.
Adam, same thing for you. Will you ask your initial question to Chukundi?
Chukundi, of the many things that we can work on in Olympia, what's your number one priority of something to get done while you're there?
I've got a bunch of first day things like no-knock warrants and banning chokeholds. And then I want to get police accountability done. I really want to get rid of qualified immunity, and I want to get some real concrete things in to work on police accountability. As you guys may or may not know, I've been working with my mother, Reverend Harriet Walden, for 30 years on police accountability. So I have a long history in this area. And what I found and through that work is that it really comes down to policy. When dealing with police accountability, there is no reform without policy and law reform, and that's one of the things I want to work on specifically. Secondarily, I'm all about youth employment. I've been working on youth employment and engagement since the 90s. You can go on my website, chukundi.com, and see articles, from 1994, where I was employing and training young people. Thank you, Tony. And so I want to continue that work at the state level. So those are the things that are most important to me.
And Kirsten, do you need the question repeated?
Please.
Kirsten, of the many things you can be working on in Olympia, what's the number one priority or what you're trying to get done?
The number one priority is getting our tax code right so that we have the dollars we need to invest in all the other solutions we need. Another big priority for our district is making sure we get right on climate justice. We have the worst air quality in the state, and I want to make sure we have a clean fuel standard and start addressing what needs to happen there so that our neighbors can breathe easy. I also want to make sure we're taking those dollars and investing and expanding, not reducing what we're providing for neighbors, because frankly, just holding the line is not going to be enough. We need an expansion of what's offered. And I also want to make sure that we are beginning to really address our incarceration system to get at the heart there. And that will mean doing all the things that the other candidate mentioned. But we also need to take clear attention to juvenile justice. That is a huge impact here in the 37th. It's something I'm already starting to organize with neighbors on. There's a lot of considerations there, which is why the considerations of where I'm going to serve in committee
10
is
seconds.
really around that policy.
Adam, do you have a follow-up based off of the question that you asked for either of our candidates?
No, not at this time.
Phyllis, once again, we're back with you, and you can either ask that question you were going to ask or ask another one. But will you, either way, please direct it initially to Kirsten.
Okay, Kirsten, how have you demonstrated this? How do you bring people together?
Okay, 1 minute.
Oh my gosh, this is a wonderful question. I bring people together in so many ways. I'm proud to organize with our first Equity and Inclusion Committee on our local PTA. It's wonderful to be in community with neighbors right now as we're stumbling through homeschooling at home and supporting our union teachers and our children. I organize so much with the Black and Tan Hall and my family there. I love to gather folks in facilitation. I have a small business where I work on anti-racism equity with my business partner. We get to do a lot of community group work there. I've also organized on really specific policy forums. So helping pass the Reproductive Parity Act. It was wonderful to work in coalition with so many neighbors over 3 years to write that policy and steward it through all the committees. And the wonderful ways right now we're connecting is with our neighbors through the campaign. It's a community campaign. We have a youth team with over 50 youth now who are organizing with us to make sure that their
10
priorities
seconds.
and their lens is brought to the work. I love following their lead. And I'm organizing in the streets with neighbors as we continue to demand what we deserve.
Thank you.
And we'll go on to Chukundi. It was pretty. You want to repeat it? You want the question? Would you like the question repeated?
Sure, why not, Tony?
Okay, go ahead, Phyllis. One more again.
Sure. How do you bring people together?
1 minute.
You know, I have a strong legacy of bringing community together. First of all, it's just as a community member and somebody that's just from here. I have a legacy of major community events, you know, like Bubbling Brown Sugar, which is a loved event at Garfield High School. Things like 100 Black Parents, where I've engaged parents from across the city and taking and engaging their families. But then I'd say also on a professional level, I've worked for the city for 23 years. And out of 15 of those years, I was a project manager where I routinely held community meetings, had a public outreach policy, you know, doing emails and postcards to neighbors to get input on projects, having to track that input and be able to put that into the public record around what community wanted on a particular project, whether it was a trail or whether it was any type of infrastructure at Seattle Park. So I've organized and brought people together informally and formally for many years now, and will continue to do so at the state level.
And Phyllis, do you have follow-up for either one of our candidates on their answers?
Yeah, I just have a follow-up for Chukundi on this one. People that you've come in contact with and that you've been putting together, once the campaign is over, once whoever goes into office, how is that relationship going to continue?
30 seconds.
You know what? I mean, honestly, I'm going to continue to do the work that I've been doing for years. Everything that you see me working on that I say is a priority to me, I do it already. The Youth Green Corps, 100 Black Parents, This House is Not for Sale campaign around predatory lending. I was going to do those things and did them before I decided to run. So I have a long history and will continue it, and most certainly will work with Kirsten if needed to do that.
And Phyllis, do you have a follow-up for Kirsten, or can I give her the opportunity to address the same question?
She can address the same question, yes.
Okay, Kirsten, 30 seconds.
So one of the biggest considerations in Olympia is that it's a place that's away from our community. You have to travel so far. So what we're doing now is continuing. We're building in our campaign now community vision sessions. We're going to continue those. Like I said, as an activist, I love to give the playbook. We're going to walk folks through the process, how to give testimony. We're probably going to have remote status. So we're going to do teach-ins so neighbors know how to adjust to this new way of keeping track as neighbors of what's happening with laws that really impact their lives.
10 seconds.
We're also going to be continually communicating with folks. And we're building some forums so we can keep activists on the ground, community groups on the ground, connected to the policy we're stewarding together.
All right. Adam, once again, please direct your question initially to Kirsten.
Thanks. Kirsten, what's your vision for our public school education? What are our biggest opportunities or where we need to invest, particularly in this era of COVID, and recognizing remote access is critical and it's not accessible for everyone?
1 minute.
Thank you so much. I'm so proud to be supported by the Seattle Association Teachers Unions and many other education associations. I'm a proud PTA parent. And as you noted right now, we have a lot to respond to with COVID. PPE and considerations of safety in our schools is huge. Our schools, almost all Black teachers and administrators and also elders who are deeply at risk for the virus. So considerations around all that right now and the safety for our children. I want to make sure we have equitable education investment, not equal investment, which means we're going to have to increase a lot of dollars in our district because we've been underfunded for too long. Another huge consideration for me is that I want to have a state bank so that we have the scale to build a public utility for internet, because to your point, no one can survive right now without the internet, and it needs to be a public utility. It's beyond time. It's like water. Everyone needs it in their home.
10 seconds.
And so there's a lot we can do right away. And I also want to address the gaps for Black folks and Black students with truancy policy and other things at the state level, where they'll make sure we end the school to prison pipeline.
And Chukundi, would you like the question repeated?
Yes, please repeat the question. I was taking some good notes.
For sure. Chukundi, what's your vision for public school education? What are the areas that we need the most investment, particularly in this time of COVID, where we're realizing everyone's remote and you need access, and not everyone has access?
1 minute.
Yeah, well, first of all, I'd like to say that I'm, proudly supported by many of the principals and teachers and paraeducators across this district and our community. People like Ted Howard, people like Dwayne Chappelle, people like Evelyn Horn, Dan Jurdy. These are folks that work in the buildings. Keith Irvin over at Bailey Gassert, the family support workers that support me and are voting for me and have donated to my campaign. That being said, I'd love to see more support for programs like the R program that are bringing more teachers of color into our buildings. And it all goes back to also at the state level, the Office of Equity. Again, we know that our children, especially Black and brown children, are not getting the resources that we need. We're not, especially in this internet age. And so, again, I want to use that tool in that office to be able to start real conversations around equity and the lack thereof it across our school district. And lastly, I would just say that I want to bring back the African American Academy in specific buildings on public dollars, but for students that are having a hard time.
Adam, do you have a follow-up question for either of our candidates?
Yeah, following up on Chukundi's last point, calling out the African American Academy, I just think of what are the resources that you can bring directly to the 37th district, that when you go to Olympia, that we can look for investment here.
30 seconds.
Well, again, specifically, what we can do is allow and give more grace to the district to be able to create specific opportunities for African Americans in this district. And so we can continue to work for our students. We know that, at the end of the day, our students continue to be furthest from educational justice. And so those are the things, the Office of Equity is going to allow us to just bring those resources to bear.
And Adam, do you have a follow-up separately for Kirsten based on her answer, or do you want to give her the opportunity to answer the same rebutted question?
I'll give the opportunity to answer the same rebutted question of what resources will you be able to bring directly to the 37th district?
30 seconds.
So the cannabis dollars used to have a carve out for education. It got moved into the general fund. It should be moved back. I also am against semi-private charter schools that are taking more resources from our general public schools and want those returned to those public schools, because that union investing and other things that are happening there and the less Black, brown, Indigenous teachers that are there is not the direction we should be going for our district.
10 seconds.
And I also want to make sure that we're increasing the overall amount from 11,000 closer to 20 to 25,000 per student in state, so we can actually meet the need, not just the mandate of funding now.
That's it. And Phyllis, you will get the opportunity to ask the last question of the debate. We squeezed enough in there where we got a few more in than I anticipated that we could, and we have time for one more, Phyllis. So this will be the final question of our candidates before they go to closing statements. Phyllis.
Okay. Like myself, I think each of us is a small business owner, so this next question is relevant to that. What programs are you proposing to stimulate small business creation and development in minorities communities in order to increase the number and percentage of minority contractors, firms in the city and the county? In other words, what will you do to get the funds to the contractor and the consultants and small businesses?
And Chukundi, this question initially goes to you.
Well, thank you for the question, Phyllis. As you know, I'm a member of the Tabor 100, and we've consistently been working on this issue. I was there in Olympia this February advocating for our Black contractors, and I've been working consistently with groups like Africa Town as well to help make sure, and with Priority Hire and other programs to make sure that our contractors and businesses are, get the resources and the contracts that we need. That being said, specifically what I've talked about all along in this campaign is bringing back cannabis revenue specifically to our district for youth employment and small business economic empowerment via microloans. There ought to be an empowerment fund, an economic empowerment fund that we can put together specifically for our district to help small business owners.
10 seconds.
And that's not just for Black business owners. I'd like to see additional resources for refugee and immigrant business owners that are challenged through the myriad of
And
forms,
that's
the
time.
B&O tax, and all of that. Thank you.
And Kirsten, do you need the question repeated, or would you like the question repeated?
I would, please. Thank you.
What programs are you proposing to stimulate small business creation and development in minority communities in order to increase the number and percentage of minorities and minority contractors, firms in the city and county? In other words, how will you get the funds to the contractors?
1 minute.
Great question. I want to say I am supported by practically every workers union you can imagine. So I'm already having conversations there about their worker programs, the priorities they have for equity, and what we can do to make sure that those folks are given priority for the jobs within our district. It's really huge. I'd like to see a model similar to the Equitable Development Initiative on the city level at the state level that is looking at community development projects and how you do the prioritization of matching folks from the community right here who live here to those projects. And we have to make sure that we do a specific consideration of dollars dedicated to women-owned, Black, Brown, Indigenous-owned businesses and immigrant and refugee-owned businesses. That's the lifeblood of our economy here. And right now, the way we can do that is by not giving tax breaks to corporations and then taking those dollars and investing them right into community grants and funds. Sustainability of these businesses now will make sure that they weather the storm with the pandemic, and they're here for us to build community on the other side.
All right. Wow. First of all, I want to say thank you to our moderators. Amazing job, Phyllis and Adam. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having us. Yeah.
Well done. Well done. We managed to get a number of questions in, and after all, that's what we're here for, is to hear from the candidates, and they covered a lot of issues. We're now going to have an opportunity for our candidates to have final words. We did the coin toss at the beginning. Remember, this is about you. This ballot right here, hopefully this is giving you information so you can fill this out and vote for the candidate that most aligns with what your issues are and your concerns are. You can vote for somebody else's issues, concerns if you want to, but it's your vote, and you get to use it however you'd like to. Now we'll have the opportunity for our candidates to give you their final pitch at getting your vote, or just saying whatever they want to say, however they want to communicate it. And Chukundi, you have 2 minutes, and you are now on the clock for your closing statement.
First of all, I just want to say thank you again to Rainier Avenue Radio for having me. I appreciate it. It's a great opportunity. And I just want folks to know that are watching this today that, again, I've been a servant leader in this community, for over 30 years. My family's integrity is intact. Okay, whether it's my mother, Reverend Harriet Walden, or my brother, Omari Salisbury, or myself, Chukundi Salisbury. So, I think that folks just need to look at my record and understand that, I'm not a politician, right? And I haven't been in Olympia for the last 23 years working with folks on policy. But I have been in the community, and I've seen my neighbors and my community get washed away by gentrification while Olympia was making deals and pushing policy, the same thing that allowed us to get washed away, right? The same policy that let police officers, murder our people. The same policies that let the guns come into our community where all of our sons and daughters and brothers and sisters have been murdered, right? And at the end of the day, the reason why I'm running is because I care. I didn't need to do this. This was not my aspiration. I've worked for the city for 23 years. I have an amazing career as an internationally known DJ. Right? I'm doing this because I care, and I really want to see some reform, and I know that that's where it's at, that it starts with policy. So yes, that is where I'm at, and that's where I'm going. You have a clear choice. I'm coming in, I'm leading with love, and that's the reason why I'm running, and I hope that you can look at my record and make a decision, but you have a clear decision. I have not been in Olympia.
10 seconds.
But I plan to go there, do the work of the people, and have the voice and use the legacy and stand on the shoulders that I've stood on for years to continue this work.
And that's time.
And it's really up to you. I hope you make the right choice.
And Kirsten, you have 2 minutes for your closing statement, your last appeal, or whatever you want to say, however you want to say it to our voters. And you are now on the clock. 2 minutes.
Thank you again, Rainier Avenue Radio, for hosting us. Thank you so much, Phyllis and Adam, for those incredible questions and the warmth in which you facilitated. I am humbled to have been asked by my neighbors for this moment to run. I'm really proud to be a Black queer woman who's been in the work for a long time. I'm really proud to have marched in the streets with my neighbors this summer. And I'm really proud of the community that we've built around our community campaign. I didn't know 50 youth would be standing beside us to make sure the next generation doesn't have to fight for the things we're fighting for now. I didn't know that I'd be homeschooling my kids during a pandemic and get to have this much time with my family while I was campaigning. There's a lot we didn't know in January. We also didn't know we could change our entire education system to be a new, innovative way. And that's the kind of bold vision I want to bring with our neighbors to make change. I don't think there's anything wrong with knowing the playbook. I don't think there's anything wrong with have done work there and also be in the streets and in activism. It's how I've built my community. It's how I've built my love and life for the 37th. And I'm really proud of what we've built here because we're not taking corporate PAC dollars. We're not taking fossil fuel dollars. We didn't take the current incumbent's endorsement because Chukundi's right. What happened before is not going to measure up now. 2020 is a moment of clarity. And we need to do it differently and we need to do it boldly. The 37th is hugely progressive and civically engaged. Our neighbors have held the line for each other. Mutual aid here is showing up, and we've done it generation after generation, and government should be showing up for us now. If you want to join what we're building, please check us out at electkht.org. We're on all the social medias. I'm dancing on TikTok. We're in the streets. We're talking to business owners. If you see us, give us an elbow toss. Vote, y'all.
10
seriously.
seconds.
Get that ballot in a ballot box. The postal mail, we can't trust the feds right now, but we can trust our neighbors and trust our voice and show up. So thank you for always showing up. Be well.
Well, let me start by saying thank you to both of you and for the commitments that you've made to our community. I can say on behalf of the community, it's wonderful to have this choice. You've heard some of the differences. You've heard some of the similes. Now it's up to you to make that vote. So again, Kirsten, thank you. Chukundi, thank you. I want to remind you that tomorrow we have cut that down just a little bit, Daniel. We have our Black Candidate Forum. That will be airing from 6 to 8. That is Snohomish County candidates. You'll get an opportunity to meet the Black Snohomish County candidates and hear where they stand on issues. It won't be a debate, but you'll certainly hear where they stand on issues. Then again, on Thursday, it's the Lieutenant Governor debate, Danny Heck and Marco Lilas. That'll be at 8 to 9 right here on Rainier Avenue Radio. You can listen. And by the way, we have a number of listeners who listen to our stream. And it's weird that since we started doing this campaign, the top 4 cities has changed. It's now Seattle, Tacoma, Spokane, and Portland. And behind that are, again, the local cities that you would think, Bellevue, Spanaway, and everything. But some interest from Spokane. It's probably because we're doing statewide debates. And then again, on Friday, we'll have the debate for Office of the Superintendent of Public Instruction, Maya Espinoza, and the incumbent Chris Reichdale. That's 6 to 7 on Friday. We'll have one moderator from the east side in Spokane and one from here on the west side for that particular debate, if you want to take a listen, just to make sure we get a good cross-section of what they plan to do in this pandemic as the leader of public education in the state. And then coming up for Whatcom County, we've got your U.S. Representative Congressional debate next Monday, 6 to 7, Rick Larson, Tim Hazelo. We're also going to have the 37th District, Sharon Tomiko Santos and John Stanford. That's going to be here on the 29th. We'll have another justice debate. That will be for position 13 of Superior Court. That'll be Hillary Madsen and Andrea Robertson. And a couple more things that we're working on as well, so we can provide you with all of the information that you need to become your best voter. With that said, again, we hope you'll tune in tomorrow from 6 to 8 for our Snohomish County Black Candidates Forum. Thanks again to our sponsors, the Urban League of Metropolitan Seattle, and then also SAS, Seattle Academy of Arts and Sciences, and our special community partner for this particular debate, Atlantic Street Center, serving our communities for over 100 years. That's it. That's all the time that I have. That's going to do it for the kid. I will see you again on Tuesday. Until then, remember, this is Tony B. And whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you are probably right. I'm out. Peace.